people that didn't get the chance to see this can look at it at their leisure. So I'd like to welcome everybody. We are doing what we call the Forest Specialist Series today, and this is a monthly online program hosted by the Rio Grande National Forest, or presented by the Rio Grande National Forest and hosted by our partners at San Juan Mountains Association. We've got a guest speaker today, Derek Rader, the Fire Management Officer for the Rio Grande National Forest. And my name is Greg Goodland. I'm the Forest Public Affairs Officer. And to the right of me on my screen, I don't know where she is on yours, but I have the VIS coordinator, who's Kelly Defy with San Juan Mountains Association. And she's going to be that person behind the curtain running all the controls. So if you see things, you know, flashing and all that, that's her. I'm just kidding. She's just having fun. So yeah, we just have a few housekeeping items. I'll let Kelly take it away from there. But again, I welcome you to our Forest Specialist series, and we'll get started in just a moment after Kelly tells us how to operate these machines. Uh-oh. I think we just lost Kelly's sound. She's shaking her head. All right, well, I guess I get to welcome you to the operations of the program. I hope she can stay on with us, though. So yeah, we really like this to be an interactive session, and I don't have the whole script, she does, so I'll do the best I can. But you know, if you would like to ask a question of myself or Derek, don't hesitate. As small of a crowd it is, I think we can be pretty intimate today, and so if it's an opportune time, come on up and ask your questions. Otherwise, we have the chat as well. If you're not familiar with the chat, just take your cursor, move it down to the bottom of the screen, and those elements like participants, chat, share screen, record, reactions, and apps, and your mute and video buttons will all show up. Click on the one that says chat, the little dialogue, and that'll open, usually on the side, but sometimes it opens a different window and you're able to put things in there. Type in your questions or comments. In the chat right now, you'll see Scott from Kansas and Ashley from South Fork have put their names in there, and we're glad because one of the things we do is we offer a door prize. I'm going to have Kelly come up on the screen and show us the two door prizes that we're offering in today's session. One is a cool little San Juan Mountains Association water bottle, and the other, I can't remember what book it was. We'll see if we can get it on the screen. San Juan Mountains Association bookmark, and it's just too blurry for me to see. So Kelly, go ahead and type that in the chat if you would, please. And so, yeah, at the end of this session, we'll go ahead and draw our winners of those two door prizes, and then we'll contact information and figure out how to get the prizes to you. Probably a couple more things, but oh yes, if you'd like to be on an email list to get these emails of when we're having these events direct from the San Juan Mountains Association, also advise us in the chat or stay on and talk to me later. Let's see. Man, I'm not used to doing this, Kelly. It's usually you. So I guess with that, and if we can come up with some other things, I'll mention them at the end. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Derek Rader, again, the Acting Fire Management Officer for the Rio Grande National Forest, here to talk about wildfires. Derek, welcome aboard. Glad you came on.
Thank you, Greg. So 2023 fire year is officially upon us, and as we prepare for the up and coming fire season, whatever it may hold, have a few topics to go over with everyone today, and like to keep it interactive too. So if there's questions, you know, feel free. If there's any questions that come up, then you can just raise your hand and put them in the chat, and Greg will let me know that we have questions and all that. So I'd like to keep it as interactive as possible. I don't have an official, you know, really kind of presentation to give to everybody. I have some slides, some cutouts, some things I can put up on the screen to help assist the discussion and what this fire season and what fire season is all about here locally on the Rio Grande National Forest. And we can speak regionally and nationally too, but trying to keep this with the local themes of what my intent is for this fire season to the folks that participate in fire. That's not just fire. This is a collective effort. We have militia and non-fire personnel that are also red carded that assist across all agencies, cooperating federal agencies. So there's a lot of folks out there that have stake in what this is in the fire arena, whether it be fuels, planning, suppression, operations, aviation. The fire is a very broad arena and entails a lot of things. So I'd like to kind of go over locally what some of those things are and what my intent is. So the leader's intent for the 2023 season to the staff, number one is to protect the health and safety and well-being of the firefighting community and the public we serve. As always, safety of the public and our employees and our firefighters is our number one priority at all times, and it will remain that way in everything that we do. The second bullet is continued practice the core values, which are diversity, safety, service, conservation, and interdependence. And we'll kind of delve more into that. Interdependence is, our mission. We are not the city fire department. We are a land management agency, and we still have a land management agency mission. And that is something that my staff on the fire program, we need all disciplines in the Forest Service to go ahead and participate in all those things. And we are an organization that is not stovepipe, for lack of a better term. We are integrated into an interdisciplinary function. And I can put that up on the screen share also, so everybody can see it. Stand by one.
We are seeing it now, Derek.
Okay. And try to get the slideshow up. Okay, there it is. Sorry for the delay. So yeah, so there is some slides from our RT-130, which is our fire line refresher that we teach multiple times a year to ensure that people have red cards and are current and are ready to fight fire. And so the second bullet there is continued practice. So
hey, Derek,
the interdependence is.
Derek, let me just grab you on your PowerPoint. We're seeing the manager's version. Go to that slideshow tab there, and then click on that at the very top, the second line there. And then from the beginning, there you go.
Okay.
And I
Fire your themes.
don't know why it's showing our the manager's version. Maybe click from the beginning again. Well, I guess we see his version too, everybody. So
So you're able to see the version though, Greg?
yeah, we can see the slide that says the leader's intent right now. So
okay. How about now? Okay, so we'll just go through this. Everybody can visualize, what we're talking about. So the second one is, the third one is make sound risk management decisions while we employ tactics and strategies in fire suppression, committing firefighters to operations where they will have a high probability of success. There is a lot of talk out there on risk and whatnot and what that entails. And risk is an extremely complicated thing that we do put a lot of stake in the Forest Service. And that is something that we look at. So we only want to put firefighters in where we know they're going to be successful, but we're always going to be responding at some level, whether it's aggressive monitoring, watching the fire, or engaging in full suppression or anything else, any other strategies. We're going to be fully engaged with that. And the final one is continually strive towards a betterment of work environment for all our firefighters, and just have them a sense of empowerment to execute their jobs at the highest possible level. Those are the leader's intent for this fire season for this year locally to the staff that we have. And with that, we can go into some slides from the potential wildfire outlook. Everybody seeing that okay?
Not yet.
How about now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the executive summary you see there, there is potential throughout. This is the issuance of National Significant Wildfire Potential Outlook from Predictive Services up at NIFC. They update these every now and again, and there is a video that is associated with this, and we can go through the video and look at that also if it will share. Right now, we're looking at, in this area, we're looking at an average fire season. So what is average? Average is a relative term that they're looking at that's based on a lot of different variables that has statistics involved and has predictive services involved, and it takes into account the weather and what the weather outlooks have in store for that. All ties into what that looks like. So I'll go ahead and roll that video out. If everyone can see it. If not, let me know.
Welcome to the 2023 May Monthly Seasonal Outlook Podcast by Predictive Services. The latest El Nino Southern Oscillation conditions show that neutral conditions continue in the tropical Pacific Ocean after recent warming.
Derek, that's not
However,
showing for
El
us.
Nino is forecast to emerge by early summer.
You'd have to share that different screen.
62% chance
Okay.
from the Climate Prediction Center. The latest energy release component shows that the driest fields remain in New Mexico into the southern and central high plains. Pockets of dry fields are also present in Arizona, Florida, Virginia, and the southeast coast, while fields are moist and are in green up across the rest of the.
Okay, so the video is not working very well, so we'll just go ahead and talk about it instead of any of the presentations. Apologies for the media equipment, it never fails. So yeah, so basically here in the Rocky Mountain area, we're looking at average. So right now we are getting significant moisture, and predictive services issues a lot of these 120-day outlooks, depending on which region it is. And the last one that we looked at, it was basically going to be average or below average nationally for the prediction, is their prediction, and for everyone except for the Pacific Northwest. So along our Pacific Northwest region, through Oregon, Central Oregon, Northern Oregon, and Central Washington, they're looking at above average there for fire season. So snowpack is relative, and also drought monitor index is relative. And those things have a factor. Drought does have a factor in what the fire season could look like, but also very wet years where you get a lot of snow, high snowpack, above average snowpack and moisture. You could also have an above average fire season with an above average snowpack. So drought isn't the only thing that you want to keep a good eye on. Drought stricken area versus an area that has a lot of snowpack. That depends. Heavy snowpack and a quick burn off up in the mountains has an effect on the green up and the grasses associated with that. And so that also has an effect. So these are all things that, that we issue that we get issued from NIFC, and we have a lot of meteorologists that are on staff in fire that work on this day and night to get us what we need predictive service wise with our MOUs, our understandings, agreements with the National Weather Service for each location. So these things are predictions, and they are, they're accurate sometimes, and then other times, it just, you have to take it with a grain of salt. So with what you're seeing locally. So the question is always, what is, what is the potential impact locally of any fire that, you just don't know. And, you could have rains coming in May, which I'm told locally here is not, it's not anything I've seen. I've been here for almost 6 years now in the San Luis Valley in Colorado, and this is probably the wettest May I can remember. So so that you just don't know with the predictive services with what's going to happen. And here is a local fire, a stat for wildland fire. Our goal is to always be prepared for fires, no matter what the weather is, what it's predicted to be. We're always obviously on higher alert with, with red flag warnings and whatnot, wind events, low relative humidities. But you deal with the fires that come in, and that's really all that you can do. So locally, we do have a staff that we have now on board. We have 2 Type 6 engines, one in Saguache, one in La Jara, the Caneos Peak Ranger District. So the one in Saguache is the Saguache Ranger District. We have a brand new 10-person suppression module in Monte Vista, and that will be fully functioning and operating out of the Monte Vista ad site. And so that's what we have locally, and we're almost to full staff, full capacity on those modules. And by the end of closer to the middle of June, we'll have 100% full staff on each one of those modules. So that kind of covers what we have locally. And, I'd really like to hear from some folks out there. If I can just kind of pause for a second and take some questions, Greg, of what we have so far, if there is any.
So nothing's in the chat yet, Derek, and I think it is a great opportunity to pause, and now something just did show up in the chat here. Derek, does the Rio Grande have a hot shot crew? Great question to ask.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the Rio Grande National Forest does not have its own hotshot crew here locally. The 2 closest hotshot crews, which are Type 1 National Resource hotshot crews, one of which is on the Pike San Isabel, and that's the Pike Hotshots, and the other one is the San Juan Hotshots that are out of Durango. So we do have, and also the Carson has a hotshot crew in Santa Fe. So there's a lot of hotshot crews that are surrounding us, and those are national resources, national ground assets that we could utilize if and when we do have the need for that.
Derek, maybe take that just a little bit step further. Since we don't have a hotshot crew, what are the conditions as such where we might have one here working for us?
So conditions, we'd be in a higher local preparedness level, a higher regional preparedness level, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. And at those heightened preparedness levels, depending on what the drawdown is and the needs are for fires across the country, and what that national drawdown really is. We've hosted hotshot crews here before, and there's other crews also that we can order. There's a lot of resources available within the Pueblo zone. The Pueblo dispatch zone is the zone that we're in, and capacity wise, the Pueblo dispatch zone has really large capacity. As far as in the Rocky Mountain area, the Pueblo zone is probably has the most capacity and is the deepest as far as resources and overhead goes. So there is always a, a type 2IA cruise, there's type 2 cruise, and, there's also wildfire modules, type 1, type 2, that are less people and, typically put out for monitoring fires and stuff like that. For fires in the wilderness that they're utilizing for a resource benefit strategy. There's also that option as well. So there's always the ability to get a lot of folks here, if the need arises. And with those heightened preparedness levels, our adjective fire danger rating right now is sitting at moderate. And our adjective fire danger rating is the smoky signs that everybody sees out in front of the buildings. And that is based on several different factors. It does have science to it, science-based. And so that is one of the factors, adjective fire danger rating and our local preparedness levels. Right now we're at a 2 for zone dispatch preparedness level, and we are at a moderate. So it's still staying pretty steady right now. So that threat is always there, but right now it's been moderated by a lot of moisture.
Well, thanks for that, Derek. And Scott, I'm going to recognize you in just a second, but Derek said something that I'd ask you to explain just a little bit further. I heard the terms type 1 and type 2, and so I'm wondering if you can kind of tell me what this typing thing is.
Yeah, so a type 1 is a national asset. Type 1 aircraft, type 1 hotshot crew, those are assets, whether it's air or ground, that is controlled out of the National Interagency Coordination Center in Boise, Idaho, which is where the National Interagency Fire Center is. And those crews and that aircraft can be moved around as needed based on resources and drawdown and availability, and also threats, active threats. A lot of times, if there's a direct threat of life and safety, you're going to get type 1 aircraft, and you're going to get it as fast as they can give it to you, as long as the incident commanders on the ground can make sure that it's clear that those are needed and those are sent. So that's type 1 is the highest, and then there's type 2 is standardization of what the crews are capable of, and if they're self-sufficient, if they have their own vehicles, and if their purchase cards, number of chainsaws, structured overhead, that kind of stuff all plays into their statusing for crews for type 1 and type 2. So that's kind of the difference in typing as a standard versus sometimes you can get an Alaska crew to come in and they fly them down and they have buses and stuff, and you have to outfit them with their tools when they fly in, and so that would be considered in the type 2 realm, because they didn't have their own vehicles and whatnot, and they didn't have the self-sufficiency that the type 1 crew has and the structured overhead.
So I'm going to assume, you had mentioned that we have the type 6 engines as well. And so that obviously applies in the engine typing as well. We have a type 6 engine here. And what's a type 1 engine going to look like?
Type 1 engine is going to be a structure engine that the city departments have. And normally in the wildland arena, you'll see anywhere from type 3, type 4, and type 6. That is based on their pump capacity and how many gallons of water that they can hold. And our type 6s here, most of the Forest Service wildland fire engines in the Rocky Mountain region and Region 2 are type 6s, which means they are a 1.5 ton chassis with 300 gallons of water and capable of holding up to 5 people.
Whoop. Sorry about that.
Question?
Yeah, so let's go to Scott right now, and then we'll pop back to Patty's question in the chat there.
Hi, I have probably a 2 or 3 part question regarding the spruce beetle kill. One, I'm assuming that the spruce beetle kill is increase some of the fire danger because of all the dead spruce trees? Two, how many years can we forecast increased fire danger because of the standing dead spruce or even the lying dead spruce?
So yes, the beetle kill in Colorado is significant, and I understand your concern and your question is valid. Your excellent question. So that the fire danger within the beetle kill is significant, and it's significant because it's an area where the trees are no longer standing the way that they're supposed to in their root structures, and they're all the ones that are within the beetle kill are also, they have rot inside them, and so that makes them extremely hazardous. Dry, yes, but also susceptible to blowdown and high wind, and hence being extremely dangerous environment for firefighters to be in, with fires occurring in beetle killed areas. So that's the fire side of it, and this region invests a significant amount of money in flights. We call them the bug flights. They have planes that monitor. I believe it's a Quest Kodiak that's out of the region that does flying, and that's all they do is monitoring and watching this and the beetle kill in the significant areas and keeping a good eye on that. So for firefighters, that's those are potentially extremely hazardous situations, and there's a lot of science out there as to if the beetle kill is significant, if the beetles usually do what they're going to do, and if that does in fact increase the fire potential in certain areas. And I think that it could, and I think there's a lot of folks getting paid a lot of money and PhDs and whatnot working on this, as far as what those threats are. But the beetles really come in, they move in, and they take over in certain areas and do make it hazardous for all involved. And so that's something we keep a good eye on, as far as where we put firefighters and whatnot in those areas. And there's also what to do with the beetle kill afterwards and after the fact, and there's timber that plays into that, and and things like that. So there's a lot going on there, and I can assure you that there's a lot of folks working extremely hard to make sure that we're trying to mitigate the problem and figure out the best possible thing for the health of the trees on the landscape.
Is it going to be another 10 years or 20 years that we still have to worry about increased fire danger due to the beetle kill?
So yeah, I don't see that the beetle kill is one of those things that is probably not going to go away anytime soon. It's just going to be something that we have to mitigate and as we go. And I don't have a good timeline on that. I wish I could tell you. I'm an avid hunter, and I hunt the forest a lot, and walking through the forest in certain spots can be challenging, and it's definitely the need for and fire in some of the areas, especially in the Rio Grande up high, is definitely there. And as far as it's a high elevation forest. We average 10,000 feet elevation, and we also have a huge subtropical moisture component from the monsoons in the Southwest. So that makes any fire that you're going to see up high, they're going to get put out, probably going to put themselves out a lot of the time from the rain at the higher elevations where you see a lot of that beetle kill. So this forest is kind of in one of those spots where it's just not, it's a high elevation and it gets a lot of moisture. So I think associated with that is the lack of fire on the landscape up in some of the higher elevations, and I think you're seeing that's probably the reason why.
Derek, that's a great segue into going back to Patty's question that she had put in the chat, and talking about the higher elevation forest that we have here. And her question was very simple. What was your largest fire on the forest? Certainly before I got here, but I do know what it was.
West Fork. Right. Yeah. So West Fork was in 2013. I don't have the acreage, but I'm pretty sure it was 6 figures. So it was up there, and that was the most significant fire that this area has seen, and still gets talked about quite a bit locally. Still see. I go to places and I still see the West Fork complex maps and stuff up still in establishments, and it's definitely on people's minds. That was a big one. I was able to see it from a distance down in Taos when it was going on, and it was one of the biggest columns I think I'd ever seen in my life, as I dropped into Durango and saw it jumping the Continental Divide. So that was a significant event, and yeah, that's definitely one of those occurrences that we don't want to see. But at the end of the day, there can be benefits from having large fires too. There's a lot of folks we're monitoring elk herds nowadays, and elk herds are they're collaring them and on the Cameron Peak fire, and they're actually going into active flanks of the fire while it's burning to go after the green forage that comes up, so that they can graze on that after it pops up from the black. So there is benefits. Fire is a complicated issue, but it is a natural process. And so the term, fighting fire is, becoming, especially, in the Forest Service, kind of a taboo thing to say, because you don't want to fight fire. You want to try to work with fire, because fire is it's a scary thing and we don't want it, but it will also need it. So, there has to be a balance there where folks have some tolerance to it, because it is required, and it is a part of nature. And, we want to try to utilize that where we can to the best of our benefit and for the health of the forest. 109,000 acres for the West Fork complex.
And that's not a little one, is it?
In the trees, no, it is not. I think the spring fire was more than that, but that was the largest fire. The spring fire was the largest fire in the country for many, many weeks going. And so that, I think, is pretty close to that. And it's fairly significant.
Well, I think, one of the elements to talk about that is that, just to expand on a little bit further, Derek, is that natural role that fire does play for us. And when we have those conditions in that higher elevation forests, those are probably the only times that we're going to see the West Fork type fires. We're just not going to see that very often. They're not common events, because that high country gets a lot more rain. The conditions stay a little bit more moist up there, and it's just not that conducive to carry significant large fires like that. So that can be the good thing, but the opposite side, when it does decide to go, oftentimes that's the one that you just try to stay away from.
That is correct. Is there any other questions out there?
There's another one in the chat here from Ashley. She said, what's the best way for a community or individuals to support incoming firefighters in their area during and after a fire?
That's a great question. And the thing that firefighters like the most is those big signs that say "Thank you, firefighters." That just there's many things that a firefighter probably sees and whatnot throughout the process of their doing their job. But those signs, when you see those signs start coming up, I think it says a lot about the community that you're in when those come up pretty fast, and thanking the firefighters that are there, that are on scene. And it's a complicated process of incident management, and depending on if you have, there's big fire teams, type 1, type 2, type 3, and whatever that is, really, is, I think, locally, just I think just reaching out to the folks, the ground crews, and the folks that are in the big fire camps, if there's one of those established. I've seen the Salvation Army set up set up pretty significant operations, and the Red Cross will do spaghetti feeds and stuff like that. The quickest way to any firefighter's heart's through a stomach, so through their stomach, his or her. So they're they like to be fed, and there's I think that goes a long ways, and just that outreach and just letting everyone know that that they're supported. And I think that gives everybody I know out on the line a little bit extra that day when they see those things.
Derek, I'm gonna tag on to that too. One of the things that working in these larger fire camps over the years as an information officer, I'm one of them that's gotten that question a lot. And when I ask many of my firefighting colleagues, Derek just told us they're pretty well taken care of on our large events, but the way really that many of them have said, and I found this rather earth-shattering, is that you should take care of your property. I think that's a wonderful way to thank a firefighter, and that would thank your local firefighters as much as those incoming resources that come in to help them when these large fires, exceed our span of control, which is very common. Take care of your property, make it to where if the fire comes, it's an automatic. We are asking our fire crews, whether they're local or national, to come in and help us at our homes and protect that. And we'd sure like to go back to our homes after we've been evacuated. But if we haven't done any fire mitigation work, any clearing, any house hardening, that makes it very difficult and risky to the firefighters. As Derek said in his very first comment, is safety is our number one priority. So if you can make it safe for them to do their job, boy, that's a huge thank you. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good segue into what the public can really do to help the firefighters. And I think defensible space is a good message. That's defensible space has been a message for a long time. Have you cleared it? That started out as whatever it was, 30 feet, and it went out. We decided that wasn't enough, so they got expanded out. And so I think that taking care of any of your property that that warrants it. If you're in the urban interface situations that requires a little bit of saw work and maybe some heavy equipment, a tractor or anything like that, to do some work on the property, around your property, the more that you can do up front is, if a fire does occur, everything's looking really good. That's the less that we have to do later if there is a large fire. Big teams will come in and set up structure protection groups. I've been in a structure protection group supervisor many times. One of them was on the 416 fire, and just again last year in Utah. And one of the things we do a lot of is triage and structure triage, and people getting their house geospatially referenced on a map and given an assigned color for if it's defensible or not. And you want your color to be correct, and you want your whatever numbers associated with it to your property looking good and all that, so that if that does happen, we're able to come in and the divisions are able to go direct and suppression or whatever those tactics might be, and keep the amount of triage down, and your property being well maintained and all that stuff just makes it that much better. If there is something, and then water systems, hoses, high volume, there's fire hydrants everywhere, and there's those are easy things to tap into, to try to get some water to your place, or just a refill, even if it's not to your place, but knowing where those main water systems are and how accessible they are and where they are, and be able to point. The local knowledge is key for us, and we go all over the country, and that I listen to the people that have lived there more so sometimes than others that are telling me about something. I'll go out and I'll get my intel from the local folks on weather and what's going on there locally, and any kind of local knowledge you can share with a firefighter, they'll take it and they'll be excited, and it'll be talked about, and that'll be essential to their mission. And also prevention plays a role into that too. So prevention is key, you know, getting that message out. We have a lot of, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but a lot of fires that we do get are human caused fires, and that's extremely unfortunate, you know, and it goes from that category of an acceptable type of fire that possibly we can, you know, either suppress or do something with. It goes and directly into the full suppression mode because of how it started, if it was human caused. And so we want to try to keep those things down and getting the message out to the public. We have patrols, we have all kinds of tools at our, you know, in our arsenal for prevention messages with, you know, Smokey and whatnot. But you know, really just being out on the landscape, you know, on public lands, and being really cautious and mindful of what you're doing out there when you're out there. And I think that's a strong message. Is something that the public can assist with locally here. Is you know, is making sure that those human caused fires, just, they're always gonna, you know, there's always going to be some for one reason or another, but we want to keep those down, because it's a really unfortunate situation when we have a human caused fire that goes into the six figures, you know, like a West Fork or something like that. I'm not sure if West Fork is a good example of that, but a big fire that is human caused, say the spring fire, is one of those examples. That's just extremely unfortunate when that happens, and it makes things a little more severe. So anything the public can do to ensure that, you know, they're being safe out on public land, and they're putting out their campfires, that's a big one. You know, stir them with some dirt, put some water in there, and make sure that those things, you know, no campfires are left unattended and whatnot, because we do have, you know, we have a limited staff and we can't patrol every single place. And there's a lot of people, we get an influx of people, you know, during Memorial Day weekend and the 4th of July. And we can only do so much. So that's anything that the public can do to help assist in that, you know, in prevention. And I think that message is extremely important. And I think that it resonates and I think echoes, and one person sees one person putting out their campfire, then another person will do it. So that's an important thing. And I think that's, you know, one of the things that the public can assist us with is that, you know, prevention of.
Prevention's always an element that we're going to talk about, you know. It's, I spent, for general knowledge, I spent 16 years in the fire prevention officer role, and I'm very passionate about it. So thanks for bringing that up, Derek. It's always needed, and I don't think it'll ever go away either. So, hey, I got another question direct to me, though, instead of the whole group here, and I'll just state it out. What dictates leadership's decision to aggressively attack? Can I talk today? Attack a fire versus, you know, not attack it real aggressively. Just monitor it. Say, hey, what's going on up there? We'll just leave it for a while. It's not hurting anything. Maybe you can talk about.
Yeah, I think it comes down to location, and, you know, fires in the wilderness areas, you know, that or you have trouble getting ground crews into because they're very remote, and we have a lot of restrictions, and rightfully so, on what we can take into a wilderness area. And that's why it is a wilderness area, and it's pristine, and it will be forever because of that. And we want to keep them that way too. So, you know, fires in wilderness areas are definite places where, you know, you can utilize that strategy of, you know, using fire to your benefit, you know. And then obviously, you know, that comes with monitoring, and it's a whole other set of strategy that you can employ. And you can even have a big fire with, you know, direct suppression on one branch and monitoring on another branch, and that's, you know, that's completely doable. So, you know, there's a lot of ways that can be done. You know, it has to be, you know, fire is a prescribed fire is a blunt tool, not a sharp instrument. And so, you know, it's the same with this. It's you know, it's a way to treat it, and it might not always turn out the way that you want it to, but at the end of the day, you know, no matter how severe it may be, you always want to try to keep the fire behavior, you know, moderated to where it's really kind of going through the ground, on any of those fires that's, in the Ponderosa and the park like Ponderosa, that's, not burning too intense, because once you start getting that really intense burn, then you start getting a lot of problems from that. The soil gets really just superheated and has problems with erosion, and we have to bring in burned area rehabilitation teams and to do mitigation work after the fact, after any large fire, and then there's flooding that occurs too. So the better moderated the fire behavior is, the better it is for the landscape overall, because it's having, an effect in a positive way on the trees, the grasses, the shrubs, etc. And so I think there's different levels of intensities of fire that is good, and that is obviously bad.
Thanks for that, man. Clearly a very complex issue, discussion, et cetera, but I'm sure you've been in plenty of those, right?
Yeah, there's no, there's really just no easy button for this, and it's
Right.
complicated, and you just have to deal with the ones that you get, and everybody has to put their best foot forward, and you have to manage it, and or suppress it, and go through, all those motions, because you just never know. It's unpredictable. You just never know at the end of the day what the weather's going to do. And a lot of times, you can have, like I was alluded to earlier, you can have a heavy snowpack and a big fire season in the same year. That's possible. I believe it was 2019. There was a lot of the most avalanche warnings in Mineral County that they had. 2018 was the last big fire year in this region, and so that it was followed by a pretty wet year, and so you just never know there. But at the end of the day, it comes down to ignition, and if your ignition point is dry lightning and or anything of that, if your ignition has the potential for dry lightning, or dry lightning on the outskirts of an isolated thunderstorm, you're going to get fires from that if it's drier. So that's usually what it comes down to, regardless of what's happening on the ground. Normally, at the end of the day, it comes down to the ignition point. And if those thunderstorms are actually, really, really wet, or if they're isolated and they're dry, and then the monsoons obviously have an effect on different areas. You'll see the Great Basin will have usually a fairly significant amount of dry lightning when the monsoons come in the Southwest and here, from that, because they're catching that all that lightning from the outskirts of the actual monsoon. So it's really wet here, but they're getting fires from that, up into the Great Basin and the Northern Rockies. So there's an effect in it. I think that La Nina, El Nino, and the monsoons do have a big effect on how things look, and if it's going to be wet or dry, that's the ultimate question.
Fair enough. Well, Derek, I feel like we've been talking about 15 minutes. I look at the clock and it says 5:55, so I better offer up any last questions for folks out there before we wrap this whole thing up. So now's your chance. Anybody on board, certainly tap into Derek's knowledge right now.
I got a question. Greg, can you hear me from over here? Chance?
I can hear you somewhat.
Okay. Could you talk about the fuels program and the prescribed burning for the forest this summer?
Well, sure.
So Derek,
So-
if you would please repeat that, just so the
Yeah,
other folks
so
can hear.
so Patrick's question was the fuels program and the prescribed burning on the forest this year. We do have some prescribed fires that are approved by the regional office and in queue for different areas, different ranger districts throughout the San Luis Valley and on the forest itself. And so there is, right now we're looking at a couple of different ones, maybe possibly coming online into the middle part of June. The moisture that we have gotten recently keeps kicking back the dates because we don't have the correct live fuel moistures and relative humidities are just really, really, really high. So, right now the dates are kind of getting kicked back for some of those projects. And when we do get those online, there is a significant amount of public outreach that goes along with those, and notifications of those prescribed fire events that are occurring, those projects. So, we do have some of those online coming up. Recently, we have the Canelos Peak Ranger District with a couple, and and a few others, and those are also extremely weather dependent. So, like I said, it's a prescribed fire is a blunt tool, not a sharp instrument. So, it's definitely not a perfect science, but there is a lot of places out there that we have the treatments, and prescribed fire is one element out of a large scale project that you can do for implementation. And we do have a fair amount of those online and weather dependent, and also what is happening in for resource availability nationally is also plays into that as well. So there's a few factors, but yes, we do try to practice prescribed fire, and we use that responsibly, and we take that very seriously here, and how it's implemented. And that is something that we utilize, and we'll see what the weather lets us do.
Doesn't happen too often. I forgot my unmute button. So I'm like, thanks for that, Erica. Derek, my goodness. Yeah, I think time to wrap it up here. So again, any other last minute questions, real specific ones that can be short answers? Otherwise, I will advise folks of our door prize winners. And also, I'd like to invite folks to come on about the same time next month. Our plan is to have Randy McClure, a local longtime Creed resident, if not native, I'm not really sure. He's going to be talking about the mining and geology of the Creed Mining District. So that should be fun. Look for that either on our Facebook page or the Rio Grande National Forest homepage, where you see the Forest Specialist series there. Look forward to doing that. And here it is. She was actually able to type into the chat. So our door prize winner is Ashley. I'm not sure how to say your name, but we'll leave it at Ashley. So go ahead, and Ashley, if you type on the blue message box there, you can send that message directly to the VIS coordinator, your phone number of how to get a hold of her, or how she can get a hold of you, and then we'll coordinate getting your prize to you. And Derek, I'm going to say on behalf of the Rio Grande National Forest and the San Juan Mountains Association, I'd like to thank everybody for coming, but I'll give you the opportunity to close us out.
Okay, yeah, thanks for having me on, and thanks for the dialogue with the community. I really appreciate everyone's questions, and look forward to not seeing anyone out there this year, because we don't want fires here locally. So, but if we do, we'll deal with those, and appreciate everybody's time this evening and having me on.
Great, thanks so much. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.